Hi, it's Ellen from EVPL Oakland. Welcome to Chapter Book Storytime. This week on the Variety Pack, we're going to read a little bit of Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate. To see if you want to keep reading, read a little bit more, or pick up some books by the author, other books, to see if you'd like to read them. Katherine Applegate has written many stories for young people. Many years ago, she wrote a series called Animorphs that was very popular. More recently, she wrote The One and Only Ivan and its sequel, The One and Only Bob. What I like about Katherine Applegate's stories is that she tells them from different perspectives. In The One and Only Ivan, it's the animals that tell the story. In Wish Tree, the narrator is Red. Let me introduce you. The illustrations are by Charles Santoso, and they are wonderful. I'll show you a few along the way. Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate. It's hard to talk to trees. We're not big on chit-chat. That's not to say we can't do amazing things you'll probably never do. Cradle downy owlets, steady flimsy tree forts, photosynthesize. But talk to people? Not much. And just try to get a tree to tell a good joke. Trees do talk to some folks, the ones we know we can trust. We talk to daredevil squirrels. We talk to hard-working worms. We talk to flashy butterflies and bashful moths. Birds? They're delightful. Frogs? Grumpy but good-hearted. Snakes? Terrible gossips. Trees? Never met a tree I didn't like. Well, okay, there's that sycamore down on the corner. Yakety, yakety, yak, that one. So, do we ever talk to people? Actually talk? That most people of peoply skills? Good question. Trees have a rather complicated relationship with people, after all. One minute you're hugging us, and the next minute you're turning us into tables and tongue depressors. Perhaps you're wondering why the fact that trees talk wasn't covered in science class during those Mother Nature is our friend lessons. Don't blame your teachers. They probably don't know that trees can talk. Most people don't. Nonetheless, if you find yourself standing near a particularly friendly-looking tree on a particularly lucky-feeling day, it can't hurt to listen up. Trees can't tell jokes, but we can certainly tell stories. And if all you hear is the whisper of leaves, don't worry. Most trees are introverts at heart. Chapter 2. Name's Red, by the way. Maybe we've met? Oak tree near the elementary school? Big but not too. Sweet shade in the summer, fine color in the fall. I'm proud to say that I'm a northern red oak, known as Quercus rubra. Red oaks are one of the most common trees in North America. In my neighborhood alone, hundreds upon hundreds of us are weaving our roots into the soil like knitters on a mission. I have a ridged, reddish-gray bark, leathery leaves with pointed lobes, stubborn, searching roots, and, if I do say so myself, the best fall color on the street. Red doesn't begin to do me justice. Come October, I look like I'm ablaze. It's a miracle the fire department doesn't try to hose me down every autumn. You might be surprised to learn that all red oaks are named Red. Likewise, all sugar maples are called Sugar. All junipers are called Juniper, and all boojum trees are called Boojum. That's how it is in the tree world. We don't need names to tell one another apart. Imagine a classroom where every child is named Melvin. Imagine the poor teacher trying to take attendance each morning. It's a good thing trees don't go to school. Well, of course there are exceptions to the name rule. Somewhere in Los Angeles, there's a palm tree who insists on being called Karma. But you know how Californians can be. Chapter 3. My friends call me Red, and you can too. But for a long time, people in the neighborhood have called me Wish Tree. There's a reason for this, and it goes way back to when I wasn't much more than a tiny seed with higher aspirations. Long story. Every year on the first day of May, people come from all over town to adorn me with scraps of paper, tags, bits of fabric, snippets of yarn, and the occasional gym sock. Each offering represents a dream, a desire, a longing. Whether draped, tossed, or tied with a bow, they're all hopes for something better. Wish trees have a long and honorable history, going back centuries. There are many in Ireland where they are usually hawthorns or the occasional ash tree. But you can find wish trees all over the world. For the most part, people are kind when they visit me. They seem to understand that a tight knot might keep me from growing the way I need to grow. They are gentle with my new leaves, careful with my exposed roots. After people write their hope on a rag or piece of paper, they tie it to one of my branches. Usually, they whisper the wish aloud. It's tradition to wish on the 1st of May, but people stop by throughout the year. My, oh my, the things I have heard. I wish for a flying skateboard. I wish for a world without war. I wish for a week without clouds. I wish for the world's biggest candy bar. I wish for an A on my geography test. I wish Ms. Gentorini weren't so grumpy in the morning. I wish my gerbil could talk. I wish my dad could get better. I wish I weren't hungry sometimes. I wish I weren't so lonely. I wish I knew what to wish for. So many wishes, grand and goofy, selfish and sweet. It's an honor, all the hopes bestowed upon my tired old limbs. Although, by the end of May Day, I look like someone dumped a huge basket of trash on top of me. Here's one of those illustrations. Beautiful. Look at all of the notes and tags on the wish tree. Chapter 4. As you probably noticed, I'm more talkative than most trees. This is new for me. I'm still getting the hang of it. Nonetheless, I've always known how to keep a secret. You have to be discreet when you're a wish tree. People tell trees all kinds of things. They know we'll listen. It's not like we have a choice. Besides, the more you listen, the more you learn. Bongo says I'm a busybody, and I suppose she has a point. She's my best pal, a crow I've known since she was nothing but a pecking beak and in a speckled egg. We disagree sometimes, but that is the way of all friends, no matter the species. I've seen many surprising friendships during my life. A pony and a toad, a red-tailed hawk and a white-footed mouse, a lilac bush, and a monarch butterfly. All of them had disagreements from time to time. I think Bongo is too pessimistic for such a young bird. Bongo thinks I'm too optimistic for such an old tree. It's true, I'm an optimist. I prefer to take the long view on life. Old as I am, I've seen both good and bad, but I've seen far more good than bad. So Bongo and I agree to disagree, and that's fine. We're very different after all. Bongo, for example, thinks the way we trees name ourselves is ridiculous. As is the custom with crows, Bongo chose her name after her first flight. It may not be her only name, however. Crows can change names on a whim. Bongo's cousin Gizmo has had 17 names. Sometimes crows adopt human names. I've seen more Joe Crows than I've seen sunny days. Sometimes they name themselves after things that catch their fancy. Pop-Top, Jujube, Dead Rat. They'll name themselves after aerobatic maneuvers, death spiral or barrel roll, or after colors, aubergine or beetle black. Many crows opt for sounds they're fond of making. Crows are excellent mimics. I've met crows named Wind Chime, 18-Wheeler, and Grouchy Cab Driver, not to mention a few others that are not appropriate for polite company. Down the street lives an aspiring rock band composed of 4 middle schoolers. They practice in a garage. Their instruments include an accordion, a bass guitar, a tuba, and bongo drums. The band has yet to perform outside of the garage, but Bongo loves to sit on the roof and sway to their music. I'm not just a tree, by the way. I'm a home, a community. Folks nest on my branches, burrow beneath my roots, lay eggs on my leaves. And then there are my hollows, tree hollows, Holes in a trunk or a branch are not uncommon, especially in trees like me who've been around a while. Hollows can be small enough for tiny salt and pepper chickadees or a family of deer mice, or they can be quite large, big enough for an open-minded bear. Of course, I'm a city tree. We don't get a lot of bears around here unless you're of the teddy variety. But I've hosted more than my share of foxes, skunks, raccoons, opossums, and mice. One year I was home to a lovely and exceedingly polite porcupine family. I've even sheltered a person. Long story. I have a lot of those stored up the way a squirrel hoards acorns. Hollows happen for many reasons. Woodpeckers, fallen branches, lightning, disease, burrowing insects. In my case, I have 3 hollows. 2 medium-sized ones were made by woodpeckers. The largest one happened when I was quite young. I lost a large branch that was weakened by wet snow during a nor'easter. It was a big wound, slow to heal, and my spring leafing that year was paltry, and my fall color pale, and frankly, embarrassing. But eventually the hole healed, widened with the help of insects, and now about 4 feet off the ground, I have a deep oval hollow. Hollows offer protection from the elements, a secure spot to sleep and to stash your belongings. They're a safe place. Hollows are proof that something bad can become something good with enough time and care and hope. Being a home to others isn't always easy. Sometimes I feel like an apartment complex with too many residents who don't always get along. Still, we make it work. There's a lot of give and take in nature. Woodpeckers hammer at my trunk, but they also eat annoying pests. Grass cools the earth, but also bickers with me over water. Every spring brings new residents, old friends, and more chances for compromise. This spring in particular has seen quite the baby boom. Currently, I am home to owl nestlings, baby opossums, and tiny raccoons. I am also visited regularly by the skunk kits who live underneath the front porch of a nearby house. This is unprecedented. Never have I sheltered so many babies. It doesn't just happen. Animals like space. They like their own territory. Normally, there would be arguing, perhaps even a stolen nest or a midnight battle. And certainly, there have been some disagreements. But I've made it clear that eating your neighbors will not be allowed while I'm in charge. Me? I don't feel crowded at all having so much company. Making others feel safe is a fine way to spend your days. Chapter 8. I have one more community member, although visitor is probably a better way to describe Samar. In January, she moved with her parents into one of the houses I shade, a tiny blue house with a sagging porch and a tiny garden. She is perhaps 10 years old or so, with wary eyes and a shy smile. Samar has the look of someone who has seen too much, someone who wants the world to quiet itself. Soon after moving in, Samar began sneaking into the yard once her parents had fallen asleep. Even on the coldest nights, she trudged outside in her red boots and green jacket. Her breath was a frosty veil. She would stare at the moon and at me, and sometimes at the little green house next door, where a boy who looks to be about her age lives. As it grew warmer, Samar would venture out in her pajamas and robe and sit beneath me on an old blanket spattered with moonlight. Her silence was so complete, her gentleness so apparent, that the residents would crawl from their nests of thistledown and dandelion fluff to join her. They seemed to accept her as one of their own. Bongo especially loved Samar. She would flit to her shoulder and settle there. Sometimes she would say, "Hello," in a fine imitation of Samar's voice. Often, Bongo gave Samar little gifts she'd found during her daily flights. A Monopoly token, the car, a gold hair ribbon, a cap from a root beer bottle. Bongo keeps a stash of odds and ends in one of my smaller hollows, which the opossums kindly tolerate. "You never know who I might need to bribe," she likes to say. But her gifts to Samar weren't bribes. They were just Bongo's way of saying, "I'm glad we're friends." If this were a fairy tale, I would tell you there was something magical about Samar, that she cast a spell on the animals, perhaps. Animals don't just leave their nests and burrows willingly. They're afraid of people, and with good reason. But this isn't a fairy tale, and there was no spell. Animals compete for resources just like humans. They eat one another. They fight for dominance. Nature is not always pretty or fair or kind. But sometimes surprises happen, and Samar every spring night reminded me that there is beauty in stillness and grace in acceptance, and that you're never too old to be surprised. Chapter 9. I was pleased to see Samar's family join the neighborhood. It had been a long while since we'd had any newcomers, but I knew that with time they would put down roots, just like so many other families from so many other places. I know a thing or two about roots. One night, not long ago, Samar came out to visit. It was 2 a.m, late even for her. She had been crying. Her cheeks were damp. She leaned against me and her tears were like hot rain. In her hand was a small piece of cloth, pink with little dots. Something was written on it. A wish. The first wish I'd seen in months. I wasn't surprised that she knew about the wish tree tradition. I'm kind of a local celebrity. Samar reached up, gently pulled down my lowest branch, and tied the fabric in a loose knot. "I wish," she whispered, "for a friend." She glanced over at the greenhouse. Behind an upstairs curtain, a shadow moved. And with that, Samar vanished back into the little blue house. Chapter 11. The morning was budding, and I was waiting for warmth. Down the street, a lanky boy was lingering near a stop sign. Head down, he was hunched over like a wind-blown weed. In his right hand was something shiny. A tool, maybe, or a pen. He was smiling just a bit, as if he told himself a joke only he perhaps understood. All day long I see people lost in thought, talking to themselves, grinning, frowning. He was nothing out of the ordinary. I was in the midst of a conversation with Bongo, who had just pointed out to me that I was a year older, 216 rings old to be precise. "Another sprout day," I said. "I still feel like a sapling." "Well, you don't look a day over 150, Bongo replied. "Best looking tree on the block." "I'm really," I paused for comic effect, "getting up there." Bongo, who was perched on my lowest branch, sighed. A crow's sigh is unmistakable, like a groan from a tiny, cranky old man. "Tree humor," I explained, just in case Bongo had missed it, although, of course, she hadn't. Bongo misses nothing. "Because, I'm so tall." "Really, Red?" Bongo stretched, admiring her lustrous blue-black wings. "That's the best you've got for me this morning?" "Maybe you'd appreciate my joke more if you weren't so sensitive about your stature," I teased. "Corvids don't give a flying tail feather about height," Bongo said. "Smarts, wiles, trickery, cunning, that's what counts in our neck of the woods." Corvids is a fancy name for birds like crows, ravens, jays, and magpies. Bongo says she's too classy for a label as common as crow. A soft wind tickled my branches. Spring, that old rascal, was teasing us with the promise of warmer days. "The truth is," I said, "it doesn't matter what size you are, Bongo. We grow as we must grow, as our seeds decided long ago." "Oh, Red, it's way too early in the morning for the wise old tree routine." Bongo gave me a gentle peck. "Although you're right, it doesn't matter how tall you are." In a fluttery blur, she sailed to the telephone pole far above my leafy canopy. "Not when you can fly, pal." At almost the same moment, Samar and the boy who lived in the greenhouse, Stephen, stepped onto their porches. Both had backpacks. Both looked eager to greet the day. Their eyes met. Stephen nodded, just a flicker, and Samar nodded back. Not a hello exactly, just an acknowledgement. Stephen ran off toward the elementary school down the street, but Samar hesitated. "Hello," she called softly. Right on cue, Bongo replied, "Hello," as she did every morning, sounding just like Samar. Bongo can also do a passable tuba, an impressive chihuahua, and a fine police siren. Samar looked up at Bongo, grinned, and headed toward school. With that, Bongo let loose a hoarse and gleeful caw and set off to wait for the children to arrive at school. She was a regular there. Everybody knew her. She enjoyed annoying the children, and they enjoyed letting her annoy them. Bongo especially liked to untie shoelaces. While the children were busy retying them, she would snatch treats from their lunch bags. Every now and then, she would even make a polite request. She could say, "Chip, please," "No way," and "You rock," when it served her purposes. Watching Bongo soar, I considered, not for the first time, my rambling roots. What would it be like to fly, to burrow, to swim, to gallop? Delightful, no doubt. Sheer joy. And yet, I wouldn't trade a single rootlet for it. It's a great gift indeed to love who you are. Chapter 12. By this time, the lanky boy had walked past me, swiveled, and returned. Glancing over his shoulder, he stepped onto the brown lawn that blanketed my roots. The air changed, quivering the way it will when people are near, with chemicals and pulsing heat and humanness. And then it happened. He dug into my trunk with the object in his hand. Fast, deliberate. Again, he checked his surroundings. An elderly woman across the street smiled at him and shook her head. She was probably thinking, "How sweet. I bet he's carving a heart with initials in it. Oh, to be young and in love." People are under the impression that trees don't mind being carved into, especially if hearts are involved. For the record, we mind. I'd never seen the boy before. He was big, maybe a high schooler. It's hard to know with people. With a tree, I can sense to the month, sometimes to the day, its age. I couldn't tell what he was carving, of course, but I could tell from the determined way he moved that it was meant to hurt. Not me. Somehow I sensed it wasn't meant to hurt me. I was just the canvas. That said, it's not exactly a picnic getting hacked into. Bark is my skin, my protection from the world. Any wound makes it harder to fight off disease and insects. I wanted to yell, "Stop!" to say anything, something. But of course I didn't. It's not our way. Trees are meant to listen, to observe, to endure. He was done quickly. He stood back, admired his work, gave a little nod, and left. As he walked away, I saw the tool clutched in his fist. A little screwdriver with a yellow handle. Thin as a twig, bright as a meadowlark. Chapter 13. Bongo was the first to see what had happened to me. She landed at the base of my trunk, head cocked. Dropping the potato chip in her beak, she cried, "I leave you alone for a few minutes and look what happens. What on earth?" "It seems he mistook me for a pumpkin," I said. When she didn't smile, I added, "Because, I was carved." "For the millionth time, Red, explaining doesn't make things any funnier." Bongo flew to my lowest scaffold branch, one of my big primary limbs. She examined my injury. "Does it hurt?" "Not the way an injury might hurt you. Trees are different in that way." "I've got to do something," Bongo said. "There's nothing to be done." "Well, you've got a major boo-boo. I want to help. You're the wise old tree. Tell me what to do." "Really, Bongo, time heals all wounds." Bongo hates it when I philosophize. She rolled her eyes. At least I think she did. It's hard to tell with crows. Their eyes are like morning blackberries, dark and dewy. "I just hope my bark isn't ruined," I said. "That's my favorite side." "It's not ruined, just decorated, like those tattoos people get." Bongo nudged me with her beak. "Show me who did this. I'll get him. I'll squawk at his window in the middle of the night. I'll dive bomb him and yank out some hair." She flapped her wings. No, better yet, I'll make a deposit on his head. I'll make a deposit on his head every day for a year." I didn't ask what kind of deposit. I was quite sure I knew. "Bongo, dear," I said, "that won't be necessary." Bongo shifted from foot to foot, something she did when she was working out a problem. She said, "it's almost time for wishing day. Maybe this was some kind of wish? Just a poorly delivered one." "Another wishing day," I repeated. It seemed like we'd just had one. Had a whole year already come and gone? Days have a way of slipping past, like raindrops on a river. "One more round," Bongo said, "of greedy people bugging you with their needs." One more round of hopeful people wishing for better things, I corrected. Wishing day was always a bit hard on me and on my residents. Usually the animals and birds stayed away that day to avoid curious hands and endless photographs. But it was just one day. I understood its history and my role in it. I knew people were full of longings. A mother, hugging a toddler along the sidewalk, froze in place when she saw my trunk. "Mommy, what does that say?" asked her little girl, who was clutching a stuffed toy dog by its bedraggled tail. The mother didn't answer. "Mommy?" They crossed the lawn. The mother stepped close to me. "It says leave," she finally said. "Like trees have leaves?" Gently, the mother traced my cuts with her index finger. "Maybe," she answered. "Maybe like that." She looked over at the two houses near me. Shaking her head, she tightened her grip on the little girl. Let's hope that's all it means. Chapter 15. When you're the neighborhood wish tree, people talk. It didn't take long for folks to learn about the ugly word carved into my trunk. People stopped to stare. They gathered in little groups. They grimaced and shook their heads and murmured. By lunchtime, the police had arrived. I am not, as it happens, a stranger to law enforcement. A pair of calico kittens reside across the street. They love climbing up my trunk to my uppermost branches. Unfortunately, they don't love climbing back down. In the last 2 months, Lewis and Clark have been rescued twice by the fire department and 3 times by the police. Sandy and Max, the same police officers who'd rescued the kittens just last week, climbed out of their patrol car to check me out. They frowned. They'd searched the lawn for clues. They talked to passers-by who took photos. "Bongo," I whispered. "I'm an official crime scene." She was not amused. The owner of the houses, and therefore technically of me, was the one who'd called the police. Francesca, tall and thin with short dove-gray hair, lived across the street. The blue and green houses had belonged to her family for generations. Francesca was also the owner of Lewis and Clark, my intrepid visitors. With a grim look on her face, Francesca strode across the street to talk to the police. Lewis and Clark squirmed in her arms. "That tree," Francesca said to Sandy, who was taking notes on a little pad. "It's been nothing but trouble for as long as I can remember." Francesca has never been the sentimental sort. She likes cats more than trees. To each her own. I happen to like trees more than cats. "Oh, but people love the wish tree," said Sandy. She looked me up and down. "Although I imagine it's a lot of work for you." "Every day after wishing day, I swear I'm going to cut that thing down," Francesca said. It was true, but I knew Francesca didn't mean it. She and I went way back. "The cleanup isn't the worst of it," Francesca continued. "The things people wish for, the craziness. Last year someone wrote, 'I wish for chocolate spaghetti,' in permanent marker, on a pair of underwear. Tossed it way up high." "Chocolate spaghetti?" Sandy said. "I could get behind that." "Craziness, I tell you," Francesca stared at me. "It's just a tree, after all. Just a tree." Just a tree seemed a tad unfair, but Francesca looked tired and angry, so I tried not to take it personally. Sandy closed her notebook. "People believe what they want to believe. About trees?" She stared at the newly carved word. "About people, too." "What now?" Francesca asked. "Don't know," Sandy asked. "The tree belongs to you, not to the new family, and you've been here forever." Francesca smiled sadly. "Suppose it could be me they're hoping will leave." They watched Max place a circle of yellow crime scene tape near my trunk, using metal stakes. "Don't think so?" Sandy asked. Max joined them. He stroked the kittens who purred loudly. "One problem, in terms of prosecuting anyone," he said, "is the history of this tree. It's almost May when people leave their wishes or whatever. Hard to say for sure this isn't part of the whole, tradition thing." He shrugged. "That's assuming we figure out who did this, mind you. People are supposed to make their wishes on a rag or a piece of paper, not carve it into the trunk," Francesca said. That's why back in Ireland they call these raggy trees. Nowadays, a lot of people just tie a tag around a branch and write their nutty wishes, she shrugged. In any case, leave is not a wish. It's a threat. It certainly is, Max agreed. Francesca nodded at the cracked and buckled walkways leading to both houses. Tell you one thing, wish tree or not, this oak is destroying the walkways, messing with the plumbing too. Roots go on forever. She shook her head. Maybe it really is time to cut it down. No more leaves to the rake, no more wishing day mess, no more of this unkindness. Louis leaped from Francesca's grasp and dashed for my trunk. Sandy tackled him just in time. We'll finish our investigation in a day or two and be out of your hair, Max said. Then you'll be free to do whatever you want with the tree. You know, Francesca said, taking Louis from Sandy, my father almost cut this tree down years ago. My mother wasn't having it. Family lore or some such thing. Soft-hearted nonsense, she sighed. Guess it's up to me. Meantime, you keep us posted if anything else happens, Sandy advised. Francesca headed across the lawn, holding the kittens close. Leave, she murmured. What a world! What a world we live in! At first, Red doesn't take Francesca's threat seriously. Red doesn't think that Francesca will cut her down. But still, as she says at the beginning of chapter 16, when you're a tree, a phrase like cut it down is bound to get your attention. Would she really do it? Cut her down? She's threatened many times in the past, but never followed through. So Red begins to worry, and all of the residents in her community, in her branches and her hollows, begin to worry too. Are they going to be out of a home? And her friend Bongo is really worried. So Red begins to think, if I am going to be cut down soon, what would I like to do before I leave? She decides the one thing she wants to do is grant a wish, make a wish come true for Samar. And so she is going to make Samar's wish come true, to find her a friend. But how's she going to do that? She's a tree. She can't go anywhere. She can't talk to humans. What is she going to do? With the help of her community, all those animals living in and around her, she is going to grant Samar's wish. To find out how, read the rest of Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate. And the illustrations are by Charles Santoso. This is available at EVPL as a print book, an audio CD book, and an e-audiobook. It's also available as an ebook in Spanish. That might be fun to take a look at. Thank you for joining me this week on Chapter Book Storytime. I hope you've enjoyed Wish Tree and want to read a little bit more, or some books by Katherine Applegate. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great week. Bye-bye.